I am joined by Josiah up here, and we are going to be firing this cannon for you this afternoon. But before we get to do that, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about what we're wearing and why we'll be doing this demonstration for you today. So I am wearing clothing that would have been fashionable for women of this time period. So specifically that would have been either the women living in the officers' quarters or tourists visiting from outside the walls of the fort, very similar to yourselves. And Josiah is wearing the undress uniform of the Army from the same time period. Specifically, this would have been the men of the 23rd Infantry Company E. And both companies E and K were here between 1884 and 1890 to serve not as the protectors or defenders from any military threat here, but rather, at least in theory, as the caretakers of Mackinac National Park here on the island between 1875 and 1895. In reality, though, they were still active duty soldiers. They had lots of other things to attend to on a regular basis, whether it was their guard mount, rifle practice, fatigue duty, those sorts of things. But one of their regular tasks would have been firing salute shots, very similar to what we're going to do here for you today. These salute shots would have just been blank cannon charges meant to commemorate something, would have been fired at least twice a day, once in the morning with the raising of the flags, and once in the evening with the lowering of the flags. However, they would also be firing off special salute shots for different occasions. So, for example, sometimes this would be celebratory, things like the 4th of July, where they would do a national salute, one shot for every state in the Union. At that point, that would have been 38 states. They would also do this for more somber events. So, for example, on Decoration Day, what we now call Memorial Day, they would do a salute shot. And then for the passing of important figures as well, as for example, when former President Ulysses S. Grant died, they did special salute charges for him. They would even do this for local occasions. So, for example, a favorite of the tourists was salute shots to welcome the first boat back to the island in the springtime after a long winter, to welcome them back to Mackinac. But a little bit about our cannon here. This is our model 1841 6-pound smoothbore field gun. So this is the same model cannon the soldiers would have been using to fire their salute shots, and it would have been over 40 years old by that time period. These cannons were pretty far behind in terms of military technology of the day. They could not fire nearly as far or as accurately as the guns of the 1880s. However, they didn't need to. Like I said, this wasn't a military post where they were having to fire at anything. All these guns needed to do was make big bang, and they did that perfectly fine still. And so the Army sends these guns up here. They're surplus from the Mexican-American War of the late 1840s. They're cheap, they're easy to get, and so they get 5 of them up here on Mackinac Island to fire their salute shots with. But we're going to get started on our loading process now, which is the first step is something I have to do. And I'm going to put this leather glove on, and I'm going to put my thumb over the hole at the back of the gun here called the touch hole. And this is going to keep any extra air from getting into the barrel of the gun while we do some safety steps. This is called thumb stalling, obviously because I'm using my thumb. The first thing Josiah is going to do is he's going to take that gunner's worm or auger, that corkscrew shape, and he's going to push that down the barrel. He's going to give that a few twists. That corkscrew will help catch any debris that could be left over from our last charge. And so he's going to make sure that gun is completely clear before we put anything else into it. And it looks like we are clear today. If you did find anything, it would be historically inaccurate aluminum foil, which is what we do use now instead of cotton muslin cloth like the soldiers would have in the 1880s. It has the added benefits of being not only a little bit cheaper, but also much less flammable, so it is much safer for us to use nowadays. The next thing Josiah is going to do is take the sponge rammer. He's going to dip it in just a little bit of water, and he's going to push that down the gun now. This is going to do a couple things. It's going to introduce moisture, so that moisture will put out any sparks or embers. It's also going to suffocate them by pushing all of the air out of the gun. So I'm blocking the only other exit. And when he pulls that sponge out, we get that thumb confirming that we did in fact create a vacuum, and we smothered any extra fire that could be left over. So now that we've done those safety steps and we know that our charge is safe to load, we can actually put our 5 ounces of black powder into the gun. So Josiah is going to first put that in the end of the barrel, and then he's going to use the other end of that ramrod to push that charge all the way to the back of the gun underneath where my thumb is here. And Nowadays, like I said, we use about 5 ounces of black powder. The soldiers here would have been using 10 ounces in the 1880s. And if you were firing a 6-pound cannonball, the average distance of this gun, which is about a half mile out to the end of those stone jetties or so, you'd be using about 20 ounces of black powder. So quite a bit more than what we'll be using today. However, I promise you that you will still get a good bang for your buck, and it will be plenty loud. So, pretty good?
It's a really wide charge.
Okay.
It's like...
It should fire fine still.
It was almost a pop, you know? It was almost the wrong shape.
No, maybe they're a little skinnier. It should fire still perfectly well, but we've only got a couple steps left before we are ready to fire. So the next thing Josiah's going to do is take that gimlet, which is just a spike. He's going to use that touch hole, and he's going to poke a hole in our black powder charge in that tin foil. Can you reach it?
No, it's not all the way back. I figured it wouldn't be.
Huh.
It's really fat.
It just won't fit? Alright, I guess give another few pokes then.
Because, feel free to, so
normally they look a bit more like a
poke it.
baked potato.
Give it a poke.
A poke with the gimlet?
Yeah. You've done that many times.
No, I haven't.
Oh, I thought you did this all the time.
I don't usually do this part.
You're not hearing. There's
No,
no tin foil.
I'm not. Oh, that's weird. It feels like... Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Okay, you're good.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And they say, now you get to do the hard part. All I do is help you. You guys get to do the real work.
The real work.
The real work. I'm like, oh, that's black powder. I don't actually roast black powder. I just don't smell for them. So he's gonna poke a hole in that. It's gonna expose our black powder so we can actually fire our cannon when we're ready. And then the last thing he's going to do here is he's gonna take our ignition device, which is a friction primer, and insert it into that hole. So this is just a simple little device. It's just a small brass tube filled with black powder. There's a pin running through the top and a chemical connecting the two called fulminate of mercury, and that fulminate of mercury is very friction sensitive. This technology has actually been around since the 1880s. This is the same thing the soldiers would have been using at that point in time. Very, very simple. So, like I said, that chemical is friction sensitive, so when we pull that pin, that chemical will spark. That spark will ignite the black powder in the friction primer, and that too will aim that flame down onto our charge inside the cannon and set off our salute shot for you today. So, now that Josiah is ready to fire, this is the moment I remind you all this is a cannon, and it can be a bit loud, especially over here since it's not right up against the wall. So I do recommend covering your ears or pressing record on your cell phones, whatever your priority may be today. And with that, we have 2 commands left, and they are ready, fire! Well, it's a very exciting time. So, thank you so much for joining us today, folks. If you're interested, we'll have a tour starting down on the parade grounds with Maverick here after this, talking about that national park a bit more. If you're interested, Josiah and I'll be up here cleaning the gun for a couple more minutes if you have any questions. But other than that, have a wonderful rest of your evening here on Mackinac Island. Yeah.